I'm Danny Dyer. Playing hard men and acting tough has been my bread and butter. But now I've got a new role. I'm tracking down some of the most feared men in the world, operating on both sides of the law. I'm gonna find out what makes them tick, how they got their fearsome reputations, and why they're considered to be some of the world's deadliest men.
I've spent time with some dodgy geezers so far, but now I'm waiting to meet a man who's risked his life to keep villains like them banged up.
In his 10 years as an undercover policeman, this bloke was responsible for taking down dozens of villains and helped stop millions of pounds worth of drugs hitting the streets of London.
Undercover work is exciting, it's scary, it's intoxicating.
He was one of Scotland Yard's finest, and he went deeper undercover than any other detective before him.
He's in danger. Move him, move his family, move them quickly.
With each job he took and each role he played, he risked not only his life, but his sanity.
The price that you pay for a bad performance could be your life.
But how long can you spend living a double life before it takes control of you? This guy was able to lurk in the shadows while he threw the spotlight onto the bad guys. He's agreed to speak openly about the secretive role of being an undercover cop. His name is Peter Bleksley, but he's known as Blex. Cautioning drunks and arresting shoplifters as your average bobby on the streets of London can be pretty scary. But going undercover, getting up close and personal with the bad guys and then double-crossing them, that's just damn right deadly. Blex joined the police force for one very good reason. It wasn't to help little old ladies across the street. It was to get the bad guys off them.
I put hundreds of people away for thousands of years.
He's had petrol bombs and bricks thrown at him. He's been shot at and even stabbed in the neck. Peter Bleksley excelled as a detective and went on to become one of the founding members of Scotland Yard's elite undercover force, SO10.
He didn't look like your kind of clean-cut image of a traditional detective or a traditional policeman.
Using the skills he honed from being an undercover cop, today Blex continues to put his life on the line working as a private eye.
He's still putting his own life at risk, but he enjoys it. You know, he knows what he's doing.
When he's not doing that, he works as a consultant on films and cop dramas.
All the best scripts come from people who've really lived their lives because you can't make it up.
Life's never normal for these guys doing this dangerous and secretive work. Now, Peter's asked to meet me here. Feel a little bit uneasy. Feel like I'm being watched, I'll be straight with you. He's probably been sitting here an hour. You never know with coppers, do you? You know what I mean?
Why would a man who has spent most of his career undercover want to show his face on TV?
Here we go. Looks like a copper and all. How you doing, Pete?
Thanks, how are you?
Good, mate, yeah, good as gold.
There's something really intense about this guy. Usually I like to get to know someone before I delve too deep, but Blex don't mess about. He starts off telling me about one of his dead informants.
He was such a prolific informant. I mean, he'd grass up his granny if there was a few quid in it. He grassed up so many people that in the end, he was asking for it, you know what I mean? And when it happened, it came as no surprise to me personally.
Squealer, snitch, grass, whatever you want to call them. Informants are a necessary evil in the battle against crime, and undercover cops can't work without them. It was Blex's job to keep him sweet and get information out of him. For his safety, he'd meet him in public places.
So this is the pub we used to meet then, is it?
Yeah, we had many meetings in there, you know, discussing who he was going to grass up next and how we were going to get him nicked.
I mean, how would you go about recruiting an informant? I mean, how would the process work?
Well, a lot of them are volunteers. I mean, and many of them find themselves getting nicked. And I think, well, the best way to get a vastly reduced sentence is to roll over and become a grass.
The information given would often lead to Blex going undercover to try and catch big-time drug dealers in action. But sometimes that meant having to break the law himself.
So where do you draw the line?
Well, when you're working undercover, there's no rule book. You know, a lot of the time you've got to make it up as you go along. And you've got to do whatever is necessary to keep your cover. Yes, I had a spliff. Yeah, I took a line of Charlie occasionally when I was with the bad guys, but only because if I hadn't, it would have been a deal breaker.
Sounds like an okay job to me. But I'm not sure how you can be a copper and a villain at the same time. He had to appear to be as ruthless as the criminals he was double-crossing, but it's a dangerous game that only the fearless dare enter. Coming up, Blex gets up close and personal with the wrong end of a double-barreled shotgun.
This was probably as close as I ever got to losing my life.
He comes face to face with an old enemy on the streets of Brixton.
I remember throwing all kinds of missiles. I saw the police running away.
And I pick up a few tips on surveillance.
You could flip off now. I mean, what are you going to do? You going to look away or what? I mean, I'd have a good fight.
Peter Bleksley is one of Britain's toughest ex-undercover cops. He did what he did for the adrenaline, for the high, the addictive buzz that only putting your life on the line could provide. Throughout his undercover career, he took on many different disguises to help him get into character.
I always had quite a wide and varied wardrobe just to suit whatever role I was playing. I've kind of kept this leather jacket for sentimental reasons. I've had this many, many years, and I wore that on many a drugs buy or when I was pretending to be a contract killer.
His physical appearance also kept changing to suit each role he took on.
You have to maintain being that person. And if you're being particularly unpleasant, and I'm sorry about this, pal, but I've got to stick you up against the wall and give you a rub down now, because you could be undercover old Bill, you might be a Mickey Mouse kind of donut with a 9mm on you. You know, I've got to do that, pal. Get up against the wall, right? You'd have to do that, you know, and I wouldn't treat people in normal life like that. But, you know, I'm out there buying millions of pounds worth of drugs, you know what I mean? I'm not playing a game, you know, when your life depends on it, other people's lives might depend on your performance, then you have to be thoroughly, utterly, totally convincing.
Peter's choice of career clearly isn't for the faint-hearted. You have to be tough, dedicated, and not afraid of anything.
So when was it that you decided to go into the police force?
Well, my mum actually was quite a strong influence in me joining the cops. You know, I think she knew that I was, you know, a bit of a lost soul kind of thing, you know, and I needed some discipline to sort of sort me out.
Peter graduated top of his class at Hendon College and was posted to Peckham Police Station.
South East London, social deprivation, a lot of racism going on. There was a large Afro-Caribbean community in Peckham. And, you know, the cops, the people I was working with, were basically just rampant racists.
I wanted to find out a bit more about Peter's early life as a copper. So I've come to a place that was instrumental in shaping his career, the streets of Brixton. In April 1981, Brixton was an area that had deep social and economic problems, high unemployment, high crime and poor housing.
The police focused disproportionately on young black men. And in Brixton, the police launched Operation Swamp. And basically what they did was got every policeman they could muster onto the streets of Brixton with the instructions to stop and search young black men. Now, this caused a huge amount of resentment because young black guys couldn't walk the streets without being stopped, searched, harassed, and quite often fitted up for crimes that they hadn't committed.
The stop and search, or sus law, caused much discontent in the black community and tensions were running high. On the 10th of April 1981, a police patrol stopped to help a black youth who had been stabbed in the back. The onlooking crowd thought the police stopped to arrest rather than assist the youth. Rumours spread and violence erupted.
Now, I played a cop on TV, but I wouldn't fancy playing one of the boys in blue that has to tackle a rioting mob.
Was a scene unknown in the United Kingdom outside Ulster since the Blitz.
Peter was part of the response team called in to calm the hostile crowd.
What was the scene like when you first arrived?
Got here in the afternoon. A small but vocal and violent crowd had gathered, and the police had had a bit of a hiding. And when we got here, the crowd had started slinging bricks and stones and bottles, anything they could lay their hands on. The resentment and the hatred, you could really cut the atmosphere with a knife. The hatred, the seething hatred amongst the crowd for us was unbelievable. We had some shields, so we cowered behind them to start with, but they turned out to be pretty... Well, there wasn't enough for us, and there wasn't enough shields,
The police were not only outnumbered, they were also unprepared for the amount of artillery that would be used against them.
What had happened is overnight, they'd armed themselves with petrol bombs and more rubber and all that sort of thing. So they came back on Saturday a much better armed and equipped and sort of organised mob, if you will.
So there was more police injured than rioters, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we as the police got an almighty hiding, really, if the truth be known. There was a lot of very bad injuries to the cops. But, it had been coming,
Yeah, so would you say it was a deserved hiding, really?
Well, yeah, we kind of asked for it. If you go onto the streets and you harass a section of the population till they feel they're forced into a corner and they've got nowhere to go and their voice can't be heard, then how are they going to express themselves? They're going to take to the streets and they're going to riot.
For 3 days and nights, the streets of Brixton were torn apart by one of the biggest riots to rock Britain's history. Reports suggested that up to 5,000 people were involved. 299 police and 65 members of the public were injured. 28 buildings were burnt and 61 cars set alight. Peter was lucky to escape without any physical injury, but the riots did leave some psychological impact.
I decided that this wasn't the policing that I wanted to do, to go to war with the local population. That wasn't my idea of policing.
Yeah.
So I just decided that's it. I'd had enough of uniform. I didn't want to wear that cloth, which was symbolic of the hatred that there was towards the police.
It was a major turning point in his life, and today, nearly 30 years on, Peter wants to set the record straight. Rioter Alex Wheatle went on the straight and narrow after the riots and is now a successful author. His award-winning novel, East of Acre Lane, was inspired by the Brixton riots.
I remember throwing all kinds of missiles along with whoever was around me at the time, and you guys having to go into people's front porches and gardens to try and get dustbin lids to protect yourselves. I saw the police running away, the helmets falling off and all that kind of thing.
At times, during that weekend, I was scared, very scared. Our training was wholly inadequate, the equipment was wholly inadequate. We had flimsy helmets, that didn't offer a lot of protection, and I was scared. How were you feeling?
Exhilarated.
Right.
Exhilarated. To actually see the police retreat, I mean, we've never seen that.
Right.
Taking a step backwards, I mean, we cheered every step that you retreated. It was incredible to see that.
One very contentious issue that still causes debate amongst the police and rioters alike is the actual cause of the riots.
Was you aware of the rumours sweeping the whole of Brixton that night? That the police had actually killed somebody?
Yes, yeah.
You was aware?
Yeah, and what we got told was that when the stabbed victim was lying on the road, that a cop knelt on his back and put his knee over the wound.
His knee, to stop the bleeding?
To stem the bleeding. That's what,
Okay.
that was what we were getting told. But then, of course, that was getting misinterpreted, that the cops were like, you know, pinning him down and were responsible in some way for what happened to him.
Each side has their own version of events, but there were some moments of clarity amongst the chaos on that day.
For the first time since I came to Brixton in 1977, I saw beyond the uniform.
Right.
I saw a real person, real fear, and I was thinking, well, maybe he's got a mother, maybe he's got a sister, maybe he's got a brother.
I can only speak for myself, but, you know, for any of the fit-ups, the beatings, you know, and all that kind of stuff, look back, and it's not too late to offer an apology, so I'm kind of, you know, I'm kind of, to anybody that was a victim, you know, of that at the time,
I'll accept that.
you know.
Allegations of racism within the Metropolitan Police continue to this very day. Peter is clearly a man with a conscience, and this was one role he didn't enjoy playing.
It's a first for me, really. I've never done a copper before. I'm always, just, you know, sort of dealing with, you know, the villains and, you know, it's more usually about talking the talk, walking the walk. You know, this guy, he's not what I expected him to be at all. He's got a lot of charisma about him. I can see that. I can see he's obviously, you know, seen some pretty dangerous things. You know, he's been around some dangerous people.
A year after the Brixton riots, Blex became a plainclothes detective and eventually made it onto Scotland Yard's drug squad. Soon he was kicking in doors and arresting people all over London. This form of high-octane and high-adrenaline policing came with its own risks, as Blex found out the hard way when one suspect took him by surprise.
And the door's flown open and he's seen me, you know, at his door, and I've shouted police, and with that he's just gone voomf and stabbed me in the neck. Well, fortunately, I got hold of his wrist, which has got the knife in it. And of course, on the end of the blade of the knife is my blood.
Is there little moments of like, as if you go, right, that was a close call, or?
No, not really. I think I, you know, had to stay off of work for a couple of days.
Yep.
You know, but I was just itching to get back to work, you know. I was addicted to the job.
Life as a detective suited Blex. He was always dangerous, and whilst he was out of uniform, he wasn't far from the front line. In May 1985, convicted murderer James Bakery escaped from Salton Prison near Edinburgh. Police had a tip-off that he'd been working as a builder, and Peter had just visited Bakery's last known address when he spotted a white van.
I stuck my head in through the van, and from beneath a blanket, a head popped up. And I reached for my gun, and I said, "I'm an armed police officer." And with that, Bakery just put his hands to the side and pulled up a sawn-off double-barrelled shotgun. By this time, I'm in the van, he's set up, and the shotgun was literally a matter of inches from my face.
His police training kicked in. He kept his cool and ran out of the line of fire as fast as he could. He maintained cover and waited for backup. Negotiators set up a telephone link with Bakery in an attempt to get him to surrender. He'd been on the run for over a year, and he didn't want to go back to prison.
But as marksmen continued their long wait, there's been no sign of movement from the vehicle since yesterday.
After 44 hours, with no end in sight, police had no choice but to fire a couple of CS gas canisters into the van in an attempt to lure him out.
21 seconds after those gas canisters were fired, Bakery shot himself.
I think if I'd stayed at the back of the van any longer and tried to pull out my weapon, he'd have definitely shot me. This was probably as close as I ever got to losing my life in the line of duty.
I can't believe he remains so calm with a shotgun pointed in his face. The more I get to know Blex, the more I respect him. He's a proper hard man, and he doesn't scare easily. Life as a detective for Blex wasn't all about getting stabbed and having shotguns pulled on him. He also spent time interviewing victims, setting up wiretaps, and my personal favourite, surveillance.
Tell me a little bit about surveillance, Pete. Obviously, that was a very important part of your job, you know, so, I mean, just tell me a little bit about how that would work.
Yeah, well, in the police, surveillance was very important because surveillance teams would watch me when I was working undercover. They'd be there to cover my back.
And how do you manage to sort of blend into any environment?
It's about everything you do, how you speak, you know, how you act. And you've got to be able to you've got to be very flexible, you've got to be adaptable, you've got to be resourceful, you know, you've got to think on your feet.
Blex was very skilled at making himself invisible, a powerful weapon in this game. To give me an idea of how surveillance works, we're going to follow a member of our crew.
Here we go, there she is. She's into the vehicle. And the vehicle's off, down Roughton Road. So all units hold back, and she's done a right. I have eyeball. Hold back all units.
Is this the right distance, is it? I mean, obviously, it's quite close, I would have thought.
Well, yeah, unfortunately here, I'm a little bit exposed because I haven't got any other traffic for cover.
How many sort of motors would you have then? I mean, what, 3 motors? Would that be enough to swap over, you know, would that be enough to not give the game away, would it?
We used to have teams of anything up to 17 of us.
Yep. OK. So, 17, God.
Yeah, so, you know...
That's a proper bit of surveillance out, isn't it?
So now, just quite naturally, you see, we're in a very sort of unhurried manner.
You see where the adrenaline comes from, though. You know, what a job, you know what I mean? Keeps you on your toes, doesn't it?
Yeah. OK, so she's out of the vehicle. Right, let's go. Nice and natural. Don't draw attention to yourself. She's letting herself in with a key.
Obvious where she lives now, so you don't have to look over there, do you, so much?
Well, she might not be living there, she might be visiting there.
OK.
You know, well, she's got a key and let herself in, you know. Assumption is the death of all investigations. And there you see she's opening her curtains up there.
Not the job of a voyeur, I love it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, on the off chance you could strip off now. I mean, what are you going to do? You going to look away or what? I mean, I'd have a good pipe.
Well, you know, you're there to gather intelligence for your client,
That's
aren't you?
right.
You know?
And if that means she's got to take a few bits off, then you've got to get that information back, I would have thought.
Coming up, Blex tells me how the biggest drug bust of his career
It took me about 4 hours to test all those 30 parcels.
turned out to be his last.
He's in danger. Move him, move his family, move them quickly.
And I get a taste of what it's like to go undercover.
I don't know you from fucking Adam.
Listen, this is the bollocks I don't want. I don't want all this fucking bollocks.
Peter Bleksley was an undercover cop up against some of the deadliest gangsters and drug pushers in the UK. He bent the rules, but he got results. Crossing the line meant risking his life to keep his cover.
The job is extremely dangerous. When you're dealing with serious criminals, you're dealing with serious amounts of money, you're dealing with drugs, you're dealing with firearms, you're dealing with organised crime. Without any shadow of a doubt, their lives are at risk.
Hard drugs like heroin and crack became easily available in Britain in the 80s. It was Blex's job to get the drugs off the streets, and sometimes this meant using undercover tactics. By 1987, Scotland Yard realised that it needed a full-time undercover unit.
We got hold of about half a dozen guys who had done undercover work. Peter Bleksley was one of these guys that we pulled in, and we said, look, tell us what it is you do, tell us how you do it, tell us what you need to do it better.
To make it in the undercover world, Blex had to be more than the average detective.
We needed people who could act, could really be convincing, you know, walk into a pub and when someone stabs you in the chest and you know that that man may have a gun or may be a serious criminal and he says, you are a copper, prove to me you're not, and he gets you by the scruff of the neck, that person's got to be tough enough not to sort of scream, press the panic button, or give the signal for the aid to come and help.
During his 10 years as an undercover cop, Blex took on a variety of roles and busted many drug deals.
Lying was my game, and I was very good at it. I was convincing. People didn't take me as a cop. You know, they thought I was a legitimate criminal. Every week, you know, major, considerable drug dealers were getting busted with large quantities of drugs. And that was because I was given a free rein. And so we rewrote the rule book.
One deal in particular was to change his life forever.
So this is the scene of one of Peter's biggest ever busts. Now, for legal reasons, I can't tell you where I am. Now, to stay alive in this game, Peter had to be good, very good. When he became a drug dealer, he had to become a drug dealer. He had to learn the lingo. He knew everything there was to know about drugs, but most importantly, he knew the risks. One mistake could be fatal. There were no second chances in this game.
It had taken months of careful planning, a tip-off from an informant and the combined efforts of Scotland Yard, Customs, the DEA and the Royal Ulster Constabulary.
Lovely. Same feel to it or what?
Well, the decor's changed.
It was Blex against not only the IRA, but also the mafia. It may sound like something out of a movie, but this was the real deal, and Blex's life was on the line. This is the first time he's been back in this room since the bust.
What made this deal more scarier than any others that you'd done?
We had 2 firearms teams briefed and hidden in this hotel in case they did turn up with guns. The volume of the drugs as well, you know, made it what you'd call a big job. You know, it was 15 kilos of heroin, and this is 1992.
How much that worth on the streets?
Well, in those days, the street value was about 4 million quid.
How'd you go about testing it? What, just weighing it? I mean, would you cook it up, what?
No, well, I weighed it on the scales, and then what I did was I made a small hole in each parcel, took a small proportion of the heroin out, and then laid that on a piece of silver foil. And then I just burnt the heroin. So, like you would if you were about to smoke it, I knew immediately what it smelt like, what it looked like, and, you know, I knew whether it was a proper bit of gear the minute I burnt it, because you just have a quick, you know.
So it could have been a test for you, as if it could have been a moody bit of gear, and if they think if you are old Bill, you ain't going to have a clue, are you? Do you know what I mean? But obviously you knew your game. Now, obviously you got to be careful about it, you know, getting any fumes, you know, because, I mean, that's your worst nightmare, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, I mean, it took me about 4 hours to test all those 30 parcels, and by the end of it, I had a rotten headache. You know, I wasn't high or anything like that. I just had a bit of a headache, which I guess was probably a combination of the, you know, the pressure I was feeling.
Stress, mate.
You know, yeah, and perhaps, you know, the gear.
The deal was done. Blex gave the signal and his team sprang into action. He was arrested alongside the dealer so he wouldn't arouse suspicion.
That buzz you got when you're leaving the bad guys with their drugs and their guns and they're all nicked, and you know they're staring at a lot of bird. You've convinced these career criminals that you're a career criminal.
Yeah, you've pulled it off, and these ain't stupid people, are they? You know
Not at all.
When Blex performed well, he was convincing the bad guys to hand over not only their drugs, but their freedom. And the only way to do that was to deliver the performance of a lifetime.
I think I'm starting to get an idea of this business now. Peter wants to give me a unique insight into what it's like to be an undercover copper. You know, like the pressure of a real deal going down. So I'm going to be playing the role what he would usually play. So he's going to be the dealer, I'm going to be the undercover copper. I've got to get a bit of gear from him, basically. This is my game. I'm quite confident with myself. I should be able to pull this off. Let's crack on. I'm going to change my clobber, go in as a hoodie, I think. Bit of subtext. What's my subtext? What's my motivation? I've got a bit of nervous energy about me. Don't know whether it's because for the first time on this fucking show I'm doing a bit of acting, which is me bread and butter. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to come unstuck. But, you know, he's been a bit quiet around me, Pete. You know, I've spent a bit of time with him, but all of a sudden he don't want to talk to me. I think he's getting a bit method around me. But let's have a method up. We'll go method against method. I'm up for all that, mate. Let's bring it on.
It's not like Blex went to drama school or anything. Everything he knows he learned from the streets. As part of his training on Scotland Yard's elite undercover unit, Blex would often have to take part in role plays designed to push officers to their limits.
You know, it'd be interesting to see how Danny reacts to the little bits of different pressure that I put him under.
So here's the deal. I'll be playing the role of an undercover cop who wants to buy some gear. Blex will be playing a drug dealer who might be able to sort me out. We've been put in touch by a mutual acquaintance called Mick.
Hey?
Yeah.
Stuck in traffic?
Yeah, sorry I'm late. It was,
No, you're all right, you're sweet. You're sweet as.
Yeah.
No problem.
How you doing?
Yeah, good as gold, yeah.
Lovely. How long you known Mick?
Oh, fuck, mate. I've known Mick for fucking ages, to be honest with you. A long time.
Days, weeks, months, years?
Years, yeah. You know, I don't know fucking bollocks, I don't know aggravation, I just want to fucking get it done. Boom, 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 everyone's happy, sweet as we go our separate ways, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's not quite as easy as that, is it? I've got to learn to trust you. You could be anybody. You know, I knew Mick from years ago when I was at primary
fair
school.
enough, fair enough.
I didn't see him
No,
for a few
listen,
years.
listen.
All of a sudden, he lumps up and
Right.
tells me there's some geezer, cake up with money, wants to do a bit of graft with me. I don't know you from fucking Adam.
Fire away. Fire away. Ask me whatever the fuck you want, mate. Whatever the fuck you want.
Take your clothes off.
Get my arsehole out, yeah?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I fucking take my clothes off, mate? You
Because you
fucking
could be
wind me
old
up.
Bill and you could be wearing a wire.
Fucking hell. You want me to fucking strip off, do you? Well, I'll tell you what, bollocks, I ain't fucking stripping off for you, mate. Not in a million fucking years. You must think I'm some sort of...
Really? I think you're some sort of undercover old Bill. That's what I think.
Yeah?
Because if you won't take your kit off when there's nobody else here, so that I at least can have the peace of mind that you're not wearing a wire and you're not dirty, filthy, stinking undercover old Bill who have been put into me before, then I'm out the door.
Listen, this is the bollocks I don't want. I don't want all this fucking bollocks. I understand what you're saying, but for fuck's sake, you want me to stand there, start bollock fucking naked?
It's a simple thing.
Okay, right, okay.
Small thing.
Small thing to you, yeah? Fucking big thing to me, but I'll tell you fucking something now, right? I fucking will strip off, all right? I'll get me fucking bollocks out. Is that what you want to fucking see? Yeah? Is that what you fucking want? I'll fucking do it, yeah, boom. What do you want? Fuck me, yeah, look, boom. What more do you want from me, mate? For fuck's sake, you know what I mean? Fuck me. I don't need this bollocks, to be honest with you.
And your top, please.
And me top, yeah? Yeah, look.
Thank you. Turn round. Right.
Sweet now, yeah?
Yeah.
See me bollocks, everything's in order.
I have got some brown. Okay? Mm-hmm. Do you have the capability to handle what I've got?
Of course I have, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here, mate.
What sort of size parcel are you looking at?
Well, I'll be looking at least a few key.
Well, how about if we start with a half?
Ideally, I'd want a bit more than that, but I understand where you're coming from. I understand, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Walk before we run.
I think we ought to have another meet, okay? And perhaps get off on a better footing than what we did.
Yeah. Pete?
Yeah?
Sweet as.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Look after yourself.
You mind go, sunshine?
Yeah.
See you
enjoy.
later. I'll be in touch, all right?
See you later.
Ta-da.
Bye.
He's definitely gone up in my estimations about what he does, you know what I mean? I do understand that his job, man, is fucking, that's another level, mate.
Peter and I have got a lot more in common than I thought. I guess in a way, being an undercover cop is a bit like being an actor.
If I mess me line up, I'll get another crack at it. He messes his line up, he gets shot in the fucking head. And that finds a light about me, you know?
The biggest bust of Blex's career took place at a secret London hotel. Everything had gone to plan. The drugs were off the streets and the bad guys were behind bars where they belonged. A highly confidential report on the success of the mission was written, and soon, Blex's worst nightmare would become reality. His cover was blown.
This report got stolen from an unmarked police car. And in this report, it quite clearly states my full name in bold capitals. DC Bleksley.
Oh, yeah.
Brackets Peter.
So that's all they need, isn't it, really, your name?
Well, if that had been stolen to order, or if it had got into the hands of the people that wanted, you know, I've got a very unusual surname. You know, it wouldn't have been too difficult to find me. But you see, what really, really pissed me off was that in undercover policing, you have a number allocated to you, okay? That's your number. And in all reports, in all paperwork, you never get referred to by your real name.
Just your number.
So the author of this report decided to ignore all those instructions and put my real name in it, which is bad enough. Then he goes and has the report stolen from a car while he goes shopping one day. I mean, talk about compromise my security.
By doing his job so successfully, Blex had become a threat to a vast criminal enterprise, and a price was placed on his head. The bad guys had the power and the money to get their revenge, and they would do whatever they had to get it. He was immediately moved to a secure location for his own safety.
I remember it all coming on top very quickly. The risk assessment was, you know, he's blown, he's in danger, move him, move his family, move them quickly.
Blex took me to the safe house where he spent 2 of his darkest years. He hasn't returned to the house since he left it nearly 10 years ago.
They look like nice little gaffs, to be fair, do you know what I mean? They've got a witness protection program feel to them, I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously inside it's just a, you know, it's a different story.
There was a very clear threat against me. They wanted to kill this Peter, who they'd worked out was an undercover policeman. You know, and these were very well-connected criminals. You know, they were linked to the provisional IRA. You know, they were backed by them and funded by them, and you know, they were capable of carrying out their threats.
So what sort of strain did that put on your relationship? I mean, it must have been a nightmare.
A lot of strain, you know. I didn't handle it very well. You know, I drank too much, smoked too much. I turned into a monster, really, if the truth be known.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
The pressures of not only working, but living undercover can prove too much for even the most hardened of undercover cops.
In the end, I had a breakdown, you know, and was quite seriously ill. So I left there and, you know, went to hospital, basically.
Peter managed to hide his illness from his peers, his boss, and even his girlfriend. He was, after all, a professional liar.
The doctor who I was under said, look, if you ever want to get well again, you've got to stop being all these different people. You know, you've got to be Peter Bleksley again.
He'd paid the ultimate price for doing the job he was addicted to. After playing so many different characters for so long, he lost track of who he was.
I can totally understand, you know, the whole thing of getting into the role so much that it's quite hard to snap out of it overnight, you know. On a totally different level, though, you know. It's really interesting for me personally, you know. Difference being it's my livelihood, not my life.
Coming up, Peter tells me about life after the police force.
I've worked on blackmails and kidnap.
And I discover how a man with so many enemies manages to stay alive.
If anybody wanted to put themselves to the trouble of coming after me now, you know, they'd be very foolish.
Peter Bleksley put his own life at risk every day for nearly 30 years. He managed to successfully take down an international drugs trafficking ring, but was forced into hiding after his cover was blown.
It's been a scary and fascinating journey into the mind of a man who lived a double life for so long. He started to lose his mind. The fact that he was turning into the sort of person he spent his whole life trying to put away, I think that scared him.
It all sort of culminated when I nearly killed somebody in a pub one night. A friend who'd just been gossiping and tittle-tattling about me, something that I'd have laughed off previously. It just took on a disproportionate sense of importance in my very sort of altered state of mind. And so I knocked him off a bar stool and then took the bar stool to him. And but for the intervention of a friend, you know, I would have killed him.
It appeared that Scotland Yard were unprepared for a high-profile undercover cop like Peter to suffer a breakdown. Pete thought that the Met didn't provide the support he needed. In April 2000, he sued the Met for compensation. They never accepted responsibility, but offered an out-of-court settlement of 10 grand. His belief that the police force he had dedicated his life to had neglected him in his time of need made his recovery more difficult. Peter eventually got his life back on track and now works as a private eye with Jacqueline Davis, who he knows from his early days in the police.
I had a major surveillance job come in and I thought of Pete and I really needed his skills. Peter is a good operative because he's lived the life, you know, he's walked the walk and he's talked the talk.
After everything Peter's been through and the hardship he's faced, he continues to work in such a dangerous field.
I've worked on blackmails and kidnap and all kinds of stuff. I guess there's still a part of me that working in the private sector still likes that thrill of the chase, of being unseen, of doing the job well.
When Peter isn't sticking his neck on the line for someone else, he earns a good wedge from consulting on cop dramas like Murphy's Law.
I would say the whole genesis of the new Murphy's Law and the reason why it has gone on to be very successful was down to, you know, Blex coming on board.
Elements of the character James Nesbitt plays are based on Blex's life undercover.
We were very respectful of the fact that actually Blex had lived the life. You know, we took it very seriously.
Maybe seeing his life experiences put onto our TV screens is one way for Peter to get the recognition he duly deserves. The threat on Peter's life is still very real, and as our time together draws to an end, I find out why he wanted to make this film.
You know, I was responsible for putting a lot of people away for a lot of time, but, you know, my betrayal of anybody was professional. And if anybody wanted to put themselves to the trouble of coming after me now, you know, they'd be very foolish, because all they'd be doing is getting themselves another big prison sentence wrapped around them, you know. And I decided that it was more important to tell my story than to worry about fear of retribution.
It's been a long, difficult path to recovery for Peter, and now, above all else, he dedicates his time to his family.
I've searched for a long time to find out exactly who I really want to be or who I am, and now I know. I'm a husband, I'm a dad, and I'm a colleague.
The last role Peter will play is himself.